Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. And wherever you are in this wide, wonderful, beautiful world that you live in, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I am your host, Jason Cooper. Every week we speak in around sales, sales leadership, psychology, behavior economics, technology, and so much more in around the area of sales. I'm the sales relationship coach. But what does that mean? Everything that we do in sales, we have to build a connection with someone else, a client, and we have to build a relationship. So I help fill in those gaps and dots to help people exceed and high performance. Today, I've got a wonderful guest. You are very welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Jason.
Rather than me talk about you, why don't you talk about you from what you do now and the incremental steps to where you are now?
Okay, so my name, Paul Terry. Today I work at LinkedIn. I lead the enterprise sales organization for EMEA and Latin America for LinkedIn Sales Solutions. LinkedIn Sales Solutions is an offering that we bring to B2B sales organizations to help them leverage the power of LinkedIn in order to practice what we call deep sales. We'll probably get into that in more detail a little bit later on. The enterprise sales organization that I lead is segmented into 3 geographical regions: the United Kingdom, continental Europe, and Latin America. And prior to that, I was running the SMB and mid-market acquisition business for Europe. I did that for about 6 years. Prior to that, I had spent most of my career in a company called Forrester Research, which provides research and consulting services around how do you implement and integrate emerging technologies into your business. Mm-hmm. So throughout this thread, I've always been in sales, and I've always been in sales around technology or about technology. And I've been operating predominantly living and operating outside of Ireland. I am Irish originally, but I spent all my entire career living and working abroad until about 8 years ago when I came back to Ireland in order to join LinkedIn. So that's a very summary of how we got here today.
So, look, you've been in leadership for a number of years now, and you've obviously seen a few changes. And how do you define the changes that you've seen over the last? Look, I know it's dramatically changed since COVID and all of that, but how have you seen that and your experience along the way?
So, from a leadership perspective, I genuinely have seen massive change. I've been very fortunate that the leaders with whom I've worked throughout my career, they've predominantly led from a position of trust, even before it was fashionable to do so. But if you look on my bookshelves over here, you may see a number of books by a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek.
Yep.
He's a thought leader with whom I identify very closely. I read all his work. I listen to his podcasts, and he talks about servant leadership. Yep. And I think it's become widely accepted that servant leadership is the right form. We are here to serve. Our job is to facilitate success, to help people grow and transform themselves, their businesses, and ultimately society. And it's not a command and control function any longer. It's a take away the roadblocks, facilitate, and get out of the way in order to let people be successful.
And on top of that is, I know it's probably a buzzword now, but psychological safety, meaning helping people just get on with the job. But if they're performers, make them perform. Don't get out of the way, but there to support. And if they do have anything that they want to add value forward to the business or to yourself or to other people, they won't be criticized, but they would be calmly allowed to do stuff which is right for the business. But what's your perception of that? And how do you use and utilize that with what you do?
Yeah, so psychological safety, absolutely. It's a really important aspect of running a business today. For me, I do my level best, and I'm usually successful in hiring people that are far smarter than I am. And I know, you hear people talk about this all the
Yeah.
time, but in my case, it's genuinely true. And it's not so hard to find people who are smarter than me, but I find them, I bring them into the business, and then I trust them to come up with the right ideas. And in fact, when I'm in a room with my direct reports, if I'm coming up with the best ideas, that's a really bad sign.
Yeah.
And it's very rarely am I the one coming up with the best ideas. I'm getting out of the way. I'm giving them the chance to come up with those ideas. Now, on the flip side, there are also responsibilities we have to our
Of
business,
course.
and it's a balancing act to get that ability to fail, the freedom to fail, and balancing that with the imperative to deliver as well.
Yeah.
And so failing is fine as long as we're not getting stuck in a rut and continuing to fail on the same thing.
I think it's
And that's
fell
always a
forward,
challenge.
isn't it? This the word is fell forward. So as long as you learn from what you've done, and as long as you can move forward from what you've done and do something slightly different the next time, so it is failing forward, and you've learned from that. Paul, technology's playing a massive part, and every day there's something new coming on. There's another clever app, and there's something funny AI that does all wonderful things that we can do in today's business. But how would you because I want to speak about deep sales, because it's a new terminology out there. Every now and again we get a new acronym coming out into the marketplace, but it is here now and it's probably being used for a while. So how would you define what deep sales is, and what do you think the importance of it in the modern sales leader to prioritize this approach?
So deep sales it's a response. Deep sales is a response to the changing buyer landscape. And to define what it is, we can also look at what it isn't.
Yeah.
So what's evolving in the buyer landscape is that buyers have access to more information than they've ever had before, and they're spending less time with salespeople than they ever have before. In fact, Gartner research tells us that today, on average, the buyer is spending 5% of that purchasing journey with salespeople. So salespeople are struggling to gain traction. They're struggling to exert influence over those decisions that are being taken about their business. To add to the problem, in recent years, and particularly during COVID, sales organizations, sales leaders were investing in sales intelligence and automation tools, because they felt that the response now was to ratchet up the volume of outreach. But this really just added to the problems for both buyers and for sellers. For buyers, the problem was quite evident. It increased the volume of unsolicited, untargeted, unwanted outreach, which we know they hate. And for salespeople, it just created more work and damaged their brand, the brand of the company and the brand of the individual, as more and more spam was being pushed out. So that's shallow selling, if you think of it that way. This out of date data, inaccurate targeting is really just shallow selling. It's throwing lots of things at the wall and seeing what sticks. So deep sales is the opposite of that. Deep sales is going deeper on a smaller number of accounts, developing a much more intimate understanding of the account and the contacts within that account. It's multi-threading into that organization in the acknowledgement that the average buying committee today is somewhere between 6 and 10 people, right? In making a B2B purchasing decision, and you risk everything by just hanging on to one buyer and hoping that that's going to get the deal done. So it's getting deep and it's getting knowledgeable about your accounts. And what we've seen is that there's been an evolution in what successful salespeople are doing. And we've done a lot of research on this in LinkedIn, and we've seen that top performers are doing things differently.
And how are they doing
than their average performing peers?
I'm always very curious about success, and I've interviewed a lot of people around the studies of success and what successful salespeople look like and the behaviors and attitudes that they have to have. But now it's sort of, there's a lot more to it in terms of due diligence, research, and other things, even before you even speak to the client, or even if you are speaking to the client, you have a collaborative sales approach. You have more people working on that particular client or that particular account than ever before. So how would you see that the deep sales strategies work effectively with the technology that's being used in today's market?
So what they're doing differently, and this may be counterintuitive to many, is they are actually spending, so top performers are spending 10% less time selling than their average performing peers. And they're taking that extra time that they're not selling and they're doing the research. And you've just touched on it there. They're researching their market.
Yeah.
So we've been able to distill down 3 distinct habits that top performers do that sets them apart from the rest. So the first one is they conduct the research to understand their target market and to prioritize the accounts that give them the greatest chance of success. The second thing they do is that they watch for triggers and signals that indicate to them that it's the right time, the right message, the right person to engage. And the third thing they do is that they uncover hidden allies. They go beyond regular, the obvious buyers, and they uncover hidden allies within their ecosystem that will give them the access and the credibility that they need to accelerate the sale. So in summary, top performers, they understand that even though relationships are a lot of hard work, they're worth the effort.
Yep.
And they're investing time in building those relationships up front before they've even begun to have a commercial relationship. They're earning the right to have that commercial relationship in advance of having it. That's very different from a tactical, conventional sales process where you cold call or you send emails or even send cold, undifferentiated in-mails, which is on the LinkedIn platform, in the hope that somebody's going to respond. That's an outdated tactic. It's returning lower returns on effort than ever before.
And I was going to touch on that actually, because when I receive an email now, I get a negative response in myself to it because they've not made any connection with me. They've not built trust, rapport, and the most important thing, I am the sales relationship coach, but that initial relationship, they haven't given me of anything of value. They say, it's like me tapping you on the shoulder. Paul, would you like to buy this? I've got a really good microphone here. You'd love it. It's great. But you don't know me from Adam. I don't know your background. So they haven't built any connection because people like people and brands they like trust and they can connect with. And I find emails a little bit, that's my opinion, and don't want to take it out anywhere else, but I don't get any connection there. So building on top of that, I know you got something to say about that, Paul, because I'd love to hear what you're going to say.
Well, I was going to agree with you actually that an undifferentiated in-mail is as welcome as an undifferentiated email. It's just through a different channel. And those sales professionals who choose to spam me through in-mail, they're getting as much response as those who are spamming me through email. And you're absolutely right when you talk about the impact on their brand, on their reputation. People talk about response rates to emails and so on. The numbers will vary, but let's say the response rate is certainly in the single digits, right, to a cold email. It's what you're doing with that 90+% of people who don't respond. Over time, they're building a resistance to your name, to your company name. You're actually negatively impacting your brand, both as an individual and as a company, by consistently just pushing out undifferentiated messaging. But it's even more upsetting when it happens on LinkedIn because they've actually opened your profile in order to send you a message, but they haven't taken the time to even read what's on your profile. LinkedIn is an open book exam, right? And they've chosen not to look at the open book. And I get emails all the time for people selling ERP or HR solutions. And I just think, did you spend the 15 seconds looking at what I do?
Yeah, exactly. That really builds frustration in me. And what I tend to do is I just block them because it's what they could have spent a lot more time thinking about what I post, people that I'm connected to, and other relevant things about me. and the market. Something that really makes me smile when there's an outreach is they've taken the time, preparation. They've even done a video or a voicemail introducing themselves in a really good, friendly way. Say, hi, I'm Jason Cooper, blah, blah, blah. And they talk about connection and other things like that. And they've read some due diligence about my profile, people that I've spoken to or connected to, and whatever it might be. But I think, for me, it's all about building that personal brand. And I also think if you're in sales, whether you're working in LinkedIn, whether you're working with all the other big corporates or you're in an SME, salespeople need to up their game and build up their personal brand. And I think that's just so very important. So people can actually know you, or in part, before they actually speak with you.
So what you're describing is it's deep sales, right? And so the thing about deep sales is that it's not a new concept, right? Great salespeople have always been orientated towards building strong relationships. Great salespeople have always looked to earn the right for a commercial conversation. The reason we're talking about deep sales today is that we have an ability to do that at scale based upon the LinkedIn platform. There's 900 million members. There are billions of interactions and actions and activities on that platform on a regular basis. That's a huge amount of signals. That's a huge amount of noise, actually. And what LinkedIn Sales Navigator does, and this isn't, by the way, this podcast is not a pitch for LinkedIn Sales Navigator or the LinkedIn offering, but I work there, and I work there because I believe in it. And what it does is it allows salespeople to filter out all the noise, to look for the signals that will impact their ability to serve their customers, achieve their goals, and be successful. And in the old days, let's say, there were always two elements that are required for a sale to happen in a B2B environment. That's interest and trust. And back in the day, our conventional sales tactics were orientated around, firstly, stimulating interest. So we made 50 calls a day, or we sent out 1,000 emails. We were looking to engage somebody on catch their interest, and then we went about trying to build that trust that we needed in order to make the sale. Today, because our buyers have access to more information than ever before, they don't need the interest part. They need the trust. And so the salespeople should be focused on building that trust, and thereafter stimulating an interest. But trust is the prerequisite today.
So how do you measure on the back end of whatever you do? How do you measure success of any deep sales program, not only at LinkedIn but elsewhere? Because it's a big thing now.
Yeah. So firstly, you don't measure it in the ways we would have measured conventional inputs. How many phone calls have you made, and so on. It's at the heart of deep sales is the understanding that there's more than one person is required now to get a deal done, right? So buying committees are continuing to grow. Our clients are operating in ever more matrixed, cross-regional, cross-departmental environments. And so there are people who you may never have seen before are now influencing deals that you're depending on. So one of the key measures is what is called multi-threadedness. So to be multi-threaded. So if a sales professional is doing a deal review with their manager, the manager needs to be asking, okay, show me the buying circle, show me the buying committee in this account. And actually, on Sales Navigator, you can flip up what's called the relationship map. Right, so you can see, all of the key individuals that are involved, and then you can see, well, I noticed that of the 6 people that you've identified as being critical to this decision, you're only connected to one of them as a first-degree connection.
I've seen that.
So how are you engaging with these other ones, and how do you ensure that they're voting for you and not against you? So that's one measure. Another measure is the degree of connectedness at decision maker level in general. So, we have the luxury of being able to compare within one account, within one client, we can look at Sales Navigator users versus free LinkedIn users. And we can see that the level of first degree connections and the growth in first degree connections of Sales Navigator users for decision makers and above, so directors and above, that they're at a much more penetrated level
Mm.
than the regular LinkedIn users. So there are many ways, but it's moving away from these traditional inputs, which are primarily volume driven, and it's more towards qualitative measures.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
I can see that all the different touch points that you make to the decision makers and the influencers along the way, because sometimes the influencers are just as powerful as the decision makers and the users that you got to be speaking to as well. So you can get a really good understanding of the whole sort of structure of the company and where it's going to be and where the value is. I think it's all about the value of the end users and what the difference it can make with it. So just going to change tact for a little bit. So what are some of the common mistakes that sales leaders might be making when implementing deep sales into organizations?
The funny thing about change,
Yep.
any change, is that it's hard, right? Even if those changes are good for you, take any example. I know you're preparing for a 50-kilometer
Oh,
ultra
don't remind me of
marathon.
that.
Yeah, and by the time this goes out, you'll have done
Yep.
it, I'm sure. It's good for you to get out there and knock out, 10K today, 20K the next
Yep.
time, and so on. It's still really hard to get yourself to do it and to not have that second, ice cream or whatever as you prepare for this. So change, even good change, is hard to do. And so when organizations make the decision to pivot towards a deep sales methodology, it's really important that it's led from the top. It's really important that there is an unequivocal messaging that this is, we're doing this,
Yep.
we're doing this, all of us, and we're doing this for good. And so when some of the mistakes are when change is delivered half-heartedly. All people, salespeople included, they look to their leaders to see how serious are you about this change that you're implementing right now. And they're looking for signals to say, you know what, this isn't going to last. It's the flavor. I'm just going to keep my head down. I'm going to keep on doing things the way I've always done it. And a month or two from now, everything will be back to normal. So the mistake is not giving it the full court press. The mistake is not being fully engaged. And so when we talk to our clients about driving this change, there are some prerequisites that we insist upon before we go on that journey with our clients. There needs to be an executive sponsor. There needs to be a program manager. There needs to be a commitment to get, X percentage of the users onto the platform within 30 days. Training needs to be delivered. Metrics that matter need to be agreed and measured. It is simply put, it's a change management exercise. And the biggest mistake people make is not treating it as such.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And it's got to be taken, I think, anything to do with change, or you could say it's a habit change as well. So we know James Clear wrote this book a couple of years back about habits, and there's lots of other books about habits as well. But it is a habit change within a complete organization from the top down, but it's up to the salespeople and other areas of the organization to adopt that change as well and make it as if it's second nature. But some people don't like it. If they don't like it, they're not changing with the industry and how you can best adopt the best values for the customers so you can all share and grow together. And I think it is about growth, but it's got to be done right.
I've mentioned that, we've analyzed top performer behaviors, right? So there are top performers out there and they've made the changes, they've adapted to the changing circumstances around them. So there's always going to be people who are eager enough, aggressive enough in a good way to make the changes themselves organically. But as a sales leader, as somebody like me, for example, these pockets of excellence, frankly, they're not enough for me to achieve what I need to achieve, or for any sales leader to achieve. So those sales leaders, they need to take those pockets of excellence and they need to replicate them across their entire organization. Because having 10 or 15% of your team just crush it all the time, but 85% still, trundling along, you're not going to get where you need to be. You need to bring this right across the organization. You need to make it stick for the vast majority of people in your business.
Like we spoke about deep sales, and I really understand that, but we all salespeople have to learn and grow and do as much knowledge checks about the customer as possible. But how is everyone's talking about AI now? Like I don't know it all, and I'm sure you don't know it all either. But it's making a big impact on organizations now because for me, I use it, but just to make things easier for me.
Yeah.
Um, and same with most salespeople, if you can find an easy approach that is really good, you would use it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so look, and to be clear, my perspective on AI is about as informed or uninformed as yours.
Yep.
And by no means am I speaking for LinkedIn when I talk about AI here. I think everybody's trying to figure it out.
Yep.
I'm really excited by it. Um, you know, we all know this, but I'll say it anyway. AI has been around for years. Like, think
Has.
about the very first time Amazon recommended a book to you, right? People who bought this book also bought that book. That's AI. It's been embedded in the LinkedIn platform for many years as well. The most obvious manifestation of that would be the function that says people you may know.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's not serendipitous good luck that they've guessed among the 900 million members which ones you actually know.
2
So
degrees of
AI has been
separation.
there. Say again.
2 degrees of separation.
2 degrees
Or
of
was it 3
separation.
degrees? I think in Ireland it's 2 degrees, isn't it? Because you always know someone or someone.
So it's been there for years, but what's really exciting about what we're seeing now is what I would term the democratization
Yeah.
of AI. It's no longer the remit of engineers. You and I as consumers can go into ChatGPT and we can type in any question that enters our head,
Yeah.
and we're getting back some really interesting answers. So as salespeople, I think there's the opportunity there to augment, maybe accelerate their understanding of their clients. I don't think AI will replace their understanding. It'll improve their understanding. It will give them hypotheses that they can leverage in their conversations, I would imagine. And I think it's an exciting time to be in sales. I don't believe we're going to be made, we're going to be replaced by AI as sales professionals. I think we will be augmented. I think we're going to get some superpowers out of it. And already, AI, even on the Sales Navigator platform, has been present for quite a while as well. And we talk about the triggers when the platform recommends people that that have worked in companies that were clients of yours in the past, or people who've changed role, or we know you sell to CIOs in the pharmaceutical industry. Here are some heads of infrastructure in pharmaceuticals that maybe you haven't seen before. So it's all driven by AI, and it's really just the ability to filter data and look for signals at a speed and scale that is far beyond the human capability. And that's very exciting.
I love it. I love any slight change to this, and artificial intelligence, especially now, it just seems to be exploding, and it's really good. It's really, really good, and it's sort of mind blowing how good it actually is. But it's also quite scary because we have to make sure it's humanized, make sure whatever comes out is authentic, but it's got to come out with your own words and your own point of view. AI might change the wording around to make it look a little bit better and better presented, which is great. But I think it's got to be a little bit human touch to it.
I agree. I think it can help us. It won't replace the work that we do. And you see a lot of the tech stack is now being driven by AI, and I think there's an ability to help salespeople to be more efficient. There's a horribly frightening statistic about the proportion of time that salespeople actually get to spend in front of their clients because they're doing so many other different things. And I think it can help. It can help that, hopefully.
I always like to give golden nuggets, and I know you're giving lots of golden nuggets forward. One piece of advice for a salesperson and sales leader, what would that look and feel like to you?
I would say put yourself in the shoes of your buyer. Why do I say that? So a couple of weeks ago, I randomly tripped over a post by an individual on the LinkedIn platform. And this individual was advising their network to say, don't do research before you cold call. Don't waste the time doing research before you cold call, because 96% of the times the phone will not be answered. So why waste the time researching everybody when, only 4% of everyone answers the phone? And I was compelled to respond to that post and ask the author to put himself in the shoes of the buyer for a moment. Yeah. Imagine being one of those 4% who answer the phone and finding that the salesperson at the end of the line doesn't know anything about them, doesn't know anything about their company, and is now asking them to educate the salesperson. I find that the height of disrespect. Yep. So put yourself in the shoes of your buyer. What would they want to believe about you in order to have a fruitful commercial relationship? They would want to trust you. They would want to know that you're going to give solid advice, even if on some occasions that means, don't buy my product. They would want to know that you're a voice of reason in the area of which you consider yourself to be an expert. And so just think about that. How do you build your brand of yourself and your company in such a way that you've got that established reputation?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for spending an hour. I know you've had lots of back-to-back meetings all day, every day. So spending 1 hour out of your busy schedule to speak with me on something that you're passionate about, and I know it's going to be of value forward. So thanks for being a guest on my Global Sales Leader podcast, where I interview some phenomenal people from around the world, always giving value forward. If someone can learn and grow from what Paul said today and any of the other weekly podcasts that I release, I think we make the world a better place. That's the way I look at it. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Jason.